Zamru l'Adonai Bechinor b'chol zimra, b'chatzotzrot b'chol shofar, Ariel lifnei melech Adonai. Zamru l'Adonai Bechinor b'chol zimra, b'chatzotzrot b'chol shofar, Ariel lifnei melech Adonai. Yiram hayam umelo, tevel veyoshveva, niharot imcha uchav, yachad harim yiranenu. Yiram hayam umelo, tevel veyoshveva, niharot imcha uchav, yachad harim yiranenu. Lifnei Adonai kiva, lishpot taretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, ve'amin b'mesharim. Yiram hayam umelo, tevel ve'yoshveva, niharot imcha uchav, yachad harim yiranenu.
Bravo, Gary. Wonderful.
Sounded better than it was muted? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Who wants to start off? Cynthia, how about you?
Am I muted?
You're good.
Okay. Oh, it says here I'm muted.
No.
The Eternal appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he was sitting at the entrance of the tent at about the hottest time of the day. Looking up, he saw, lo, 3 men standing in opposite him. Seeing them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to meet them, and bowing down to the ground, he said, "My lords, if I have found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, then wash your feet and recline under a tree. And let me bring a bit of bread and you can restore yourselves. Then you can go on, now that you have come across your servant." And they responded, "Very well, do as you propose." Abraham then hurried toward the tent to Sarah and said, "Hurry, knead 3 measures of wheat flour and bake some bread cakes." Abraham then ran to the herd and took a young calf, tender and sound, and gave it to the servant lad who quickly prepared it. He took sour milk and sweet milk and the calf he had prepared and set it all before them, and he stood over them under the tree, and they ate. They then said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" "There in the tent," he replied. One of them then said, "Rest assured that I will return to you at this time next year, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent behind him. Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in years, and the way of women had ceased for Sarah. So Sarah laughed inwardly, thinking, "Now that I am withered, will I have pleasure with my Lord so old?" But the Eternal One said to Abraham, "Why is Sarah laughing?" So thinking, "Am I really going to bear a child when I have grown so old?" Is any wonder too difficult for the Eternal? At this fixed time, next year, I will return to you, and Sarah shall have a son. Sarah then denied it, for she was afraid and said, "I did not laugh," but God said, "Ah, but you did laugh."
Oh, my. So do you remember last week it was Abraham who laughed, and now Sarah.
Sarah,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Right.
33 more years, baby.
Went up from there and gazed down upon Sodom, Abraham going along with him to send them off. The Eternal then thought, "Should I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Yet Abraham is certain to become a great and populous nation, and through him all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. For I have selected," let's see, where am I now? Him, so that he may teach his children and those who come after him to keep the way of the Eternal, doing what is right and just, so that the Eternal may fulfill for Abraham all that has been promised him. The Eternal One then said, "The outcry in Sodom and Gomorrah, how great it is, and their crime, how grave it is. Let me go down and determine whether they are wreaking havoc in the equal measure to the shrieking that is coming to me. If not, I will know. The men now turned away and went toward Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Eternal. Abraham then came forward and said, will you indeed sweep away the innocent along with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 innocent in the city. Will you indeed sweep away the place and not spare it for the sake of the 50 innocent who are in its midst? Far be it from you to do such a thing, killing innocent and wicked alike, so that the innocent and the wicked suffer the same fate. Far be it from you. Must not the judge of all the earth do justly? The Eternal One said, if I find 50 innocent people in Sodom, I will pardon the whole place for their sake. Again, Abraham spoke, look now, let me undertake to speak up to my Lord, though I am but dust and ashes. What if the 50 innocent are 5 short? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5? God answered, if I find 45 there, I will not destroy it. Once more, Abraham spoke up. What if 40 are found there? And God answered, for the sake of the 40, I will not do it. Then he said, do not be angry, my Lord, and let me speak. What if 30 are found there? If I find 30 there, said God, I will not do it. And Abraham said, look now, let me undertake to speak up before my Lord. What if 20 are found there? And God said, for the sake of the 20, I will not destroy it. Then Abraham said, let not my Lord be angry, and let me speak up one last time. What if 10 are found there? And God said, for the sake of the 10, I will not destroy it. Then, done speaking to Abraham, the Eternal departed, and Abraham returned to his place. That evening,
A lot of bargaining going on.
Yeah.
Abraham bargained with, that's right, he bargained with God.
Yeah.
That evening, the 2 divine emissaries came to Sodom, where Lot was sitting at the Sodom gate. Seeing them, Lot got up to greet them, and bowing all the way to the ground, he said, come now, my lords, turn to your servant's house, stay there overnight and wash your feet. When you get up, you can go on your way. No, said they, we'll stay the night in the open. He so pressed them, however, that they followed him and entered his house, where he made them a festive meal, baked unleavened bread, and they ate. They had let to lie down when the townspeople, the people of Sodom, young and old alike, all the people from every side gathered around the house and called to Lot, saying, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so we can have them. Ay, ay, ay. Lot went out to them at the entrance and shut the door behind him. He said, please, brothers, do no evil. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never been intimate with a man. Let me bring them out for you and do to them as you please. But do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof.
Boy, is that sexist,
I
man.
know, gee.
Gee.
Yeah.
It is awful. It's awful.
Yeah, it really is.
But they
What would
Just
Archie
rape-
Bunker say?
Just rape the women, that's okay. Why
Yeah.
not?
Women are property at this time.
Yeah.
That's correct.
They-
Unfortunately, you're right.
It's very sad. Why don't we go all the way to the end of that paragraph, then maybe we can talk a little bit more. Go ahead.
But they said, get out of the way. And they said, this fellow comes here to stay a while, and now he wants to act the judge. Well, we'll make it worse for you than for them. They pressed the man Lot hard as they advanced to break down the door. But the men reached out and pulled Lot toward them into the house and shut the door, striking every one of the men, large and small, who were near the entrance of the house with a blinding light, so that they were unable to find the entrance. The men said to Lot, whoever is still with you here, son-in-law, your sons and daughters, all your property in the city, get them out of here, because we're going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Eternal against the people in it is so great that the Eternal has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, his daughter's husband, saying, up, get out of this place, because the Eternal is destroying the city. But to his sons-in-law, he appeared to be joking.
All right, I think we can stop here for a second, because we do know that this is the pivotal part where it's like the angels of God, or however you want to look at them. They came to check out the place first, and then they're like, this is going to be wiped off the map.
That's right.
It's such a huge story for every religion. I think has this story as like a shining example of what not to do. And I think there's a lot of clues here that I think we can look at. And it's really sad in a lot of ways because, yeah, Lot does say it's really sick in a lot of ways, because he offers his daughters, and it's
I know.
very, very disgusting. However, I'm going to say this as someone who's done some investigating. I think it's a clue as to what these people were doing. And I think, I know it might be hard for people to hear this, especially if they're survivors of any kind of abuse or attack.
But that's what it was.
Yeah, it wasn't
Right.
it wasn't an attack, but what I believe is happening here, traditionally, when a woman gets attacked sexually, my thought is traditionally, if they're not trained to fight back, they're not going to fight back. They're going to try to survive the attack and maybe go blank. They're just going to allow the attack to happen. So if we think about that, like they're not going to have a resistance. The men of Sodom were actually looking for the other men because why? I honestly believe that they were very big, strong men, angels of God. And the men of Sodom knew that these people, these men were going to resist their attack. And that resistance is kind of what Sodom is about. That resistance of, it's almost like they terrorize people, and especially if they're going to fight back, that's even more of a what's the word? A lustful, almost a sexualized.
Sodomy. That's why it's called sodomy. That's basically
right. It's sodomy, but it's not like homosexuality, like two people.
That's a different thing.
That's
different.
Yeah, it's a vicious, violent overtaking of a person to the point of death.
That's correct.
Where they sexualize that torture, sexualize that murder, and that's where I think we're looking at here. And it's a real.
They were going to do it to the men, though.
They're very evil.
They were going to do it. They wanted to do it to the two visitors.
That's right. They wanted the men, and that's my
Right.
point. My point is that they wanted people that fought back. The women weren't traditionally. The women weren't going to fight back. The men were going to fight back, and the reason why they wanted that fight to come back was it was more in a sick way. It was more pleasing for them to have this violent interaction, that this violence starts as a fight. And then they try to destroy these people. And if you noticed in last week's lesson, the king of Sodom, all he wants is the people from the war. And he tells Abraham, you can have all the other stuff. And Abraham says, no, I'm not going to have anything, because I don't want you to say, oh, I gave Abraham anything. Because it sounds to me like they were just hell-bent on, it could be cannibalism, it could be any sick, perverse thing that you could.
They were, yeah, right. That's why God wanted to destroy the cities.
So I think it's important for us to remember that, especially in our day and age, where I think a lot of people think, oh, it's because they wanted men. Well, they wanted men because they wanted that attack to happen. They wanted the terror. It's like a terror where they got more out of the violence than they did out of anything else.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because if people were just going to roll over and play dead, that's nothing for them. That becomes almost like, that's no fun. The fun is when someone is fighting for their life, and then that's for them what their complete desire is. And if we even there was a book that I gave to Myrna. I was hoping Myrna was here, because there was this book that people have these near-death experiences, and sometimes they're really great experiences, and other people have very negative experiences. And one person that wrote a book, his name is Howard Storm, and he had a very negative experience. And in that experience, he says he went to hell, and this is exactly what was happening, was that the people there were trying to murder him in such a way that they wanted him to fight back. Otherwise, it was just not even fun for them. And it became very disgusting, violent, and perverse. But
What a terrible experience.
yeah, so
Oh
you
my.
can see why God wants to clear the plane. He wants to. It's like this is not allowed. He's going full, and of course this story is one that everyone knows, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Of
Can I
course.
throw something in? Can I throw
Yeah,
one little thing
absolutely.
in? You know, like Abraham was bargaining, you know, if they were 50, if there's 20, whatever. And you see that ultimately there may have been a few good people there, and ultimately God did destroy it. Which, you know, you think about sometimes, like, think back when you were a kid in school. Like if, you know, if somebody was talking out when the teacher told everybody to be quiet, the whole class would have to stay after school.
Mhm.
You know, if you're in the military, you know, and there's somebody that's making it tough for your unit, your drill sergeant punishes the whole unit. You know, it's like there may have been good people there, but the other side of it is maybe they were seemingly good people,
But
but
they
maybe
didn't
they
do
did.
anything to stop the bad people.
Exactly, exactly. So I wanted to throw that in. Thank you, Maureen. That's exactly it.
I mean, if you see something happening that is wrong, you try to stop it.
Right, and if you don't, then you're equally
Then that's right.
Right. I mean, there's a lot here to think about, but it's. I mean,
In other words, it's if for evil to flourish, it will flourish if the good do nothing about it. Turn the
Complacency. And that's exactly what happened. It's what happened in Germany, Nazi
that's right.
Germany.
That's right.
They
That's right.
didn't
It's
speak
happening.
up.
Very good lessons. Very good lessons.
Oh yeah.
And plus, you notice too that there's always that well, there is that like escape clause. You out. You know, we're gonna still destroy the city. Get
But
the righteous
well,
ones leave. Get out so we can level it. You know.
well, that's why he let Lot and his family go.
Right. Right. And it's not a good position to be in.
No.
Obviously. I
Yeah,
mean,
but Lot's
even
wife
Noah.
was too curious and she got herself.
Well, she got
Turned
herself.
into
That'll
salt.
be coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
But you notice too that Noah was in a very similar position, because people, Gary, how was it described? How Noah was blameless in the right? Is
right.
that,
Right. That's
supposedly
I found something about, you know, the word that was used to describe Noah is tamim. And I once read, I think I might have mentioned this. I once read a commentary that said the Torah only mentions tamim twice. I actually found a third mention of that word, and that is at the end of this parsha. I think it's at the end of this. It might be at the end of. It might be at the end of this one when God tells Abraham, you know, I know that you believe and you live in my commandments and everything, and you shall be wholehearted. And the word right in the Torah is tamim. God tells Abraham to be tamim. And the Torah also describes Noah as
It's Tamim.
tamim. So I think that automatically that means that Noah in his time was a good man.
He
God,
was,
he had
for his
qualities
time, he
that
was a
God,
righteous man. That is true.
he had qualities that God wanted
Mhm.
wanted Abraham to have.
right. And I think it mirrors what happens here because, you know, back in Noah's time, God wants to wipe out the face of the earth. After God wipes it out, God says, I'm not going to do that ever again. But here you go, he's going to do it to a city. So it's a small
With fire.
community. And that
And
makes
with
it
fire, not water.
right. And so Lot and Noah, I feel like are kind of like, I mean, maybe Lot didn't progress to Noah's stature, but Lot was saved out of the city. It was like,
Right.
you get out of here. And
He just
Noah
happened
was
to
saved.
settle there, though. He just
Right.
happened to settle there. You know?
Well, he welcomed the men, the angels,
They did.
into his home.
He did. He was
And this
very
is
welcome.
what you're supposed to do. And
Right.
that's
Okay.
why.
And Michael, let me make a comment before we get to 15.
Okay.
If you go across from the English and go into the Hebrew, the very last word on 15 is Hamalachim. That means angels. See, the Bible
Yeah.
before this talked about men. Now all of a sudden it says angels.
It's angels.
Wow.
See it?
Yep. That's great.
Instead, in English, they say divine emissaries,
Right, but
but
okay,
it's
but
angels.
it's angels. But so how did we go from being men? So why wouldn't the Bible say men down here too? So either you say men all the time, or you say angels. Why a man in one place and angels in the other?
Isn't that just in the English the way it's translated though? In the
No,
Torah
no.
itself?
It's in the Hebrew.
No, it's the same thing in Hebrew. That's why he said that.
Yeah, it's the same. So in one is men, and the other one is you know, Melachim.
Vayeira anashim.
Did
That's
they
right.
switch? Did they change shapes? Did they come? They started with men and they no.
I see that now. They came in the shape of men.
Well,
that,
yes.
just like the ones that came to Abraham.
They were the
Vayeruba
same. The same.
anashim. I didn't know
They were the same emissaries.
Yeah, they were the same emissaries.
They're correct.
But
Yeah,
at
but
least
I'm
in the Hebrew, because you know, in the English it's a little more difficult to see, but in the Hebrew you can see it immediately.
They were in
Yeah.
the form of men.
Yeah.
So that, they
So
could be.
I just thought I'd bring that up.
I
Wow.
didn't see
Because
that until I
once-
see it here. Vayomru
Once
anashim.
they are going to perform their mission, they become angels again, maybe
What do you think?
instead of men.
Well,
Does that make sense?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I think of it a little different. I think of them as angels, not so much in the ethereal sense, but that actually that their behavior was like of angels. That's how I looked at it. That they started out as men and then they act like divine
But they are
emissaries.
angels. They're emissaries from God. They are angels. They are.
Yeah.
They're not men.
and
In
and
the
I,
sense
and I
of
think
human. They are not human.
that's right.
They're not
And,
mankind.
and I think that if we take that thought one little step, we think of angels as two parts. One, they are emissaries from God, and the other one is that they have one task and one task only. Those are the two things about angels.
Well, not everyone has a different task, don't they?
Okay, but once you finish, then the angels go back to heaven and another one comes down. Okay.
So if you see paintings, that's what you'll see.
Shall we continue? 15?
Absolutely.
All right. Ruth, do you want to start reading?
Sure, I'll start. Just as dawn was rising, the divine emissaries rushed Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be caught." Wait a minute. Up in the city's punishment. As he vacillated, the men in the Eternal's pity for him seized his hand, his wife's, and those of his two daughters, and took them out, setting them down outside the city. Having taken them outside, one said, "Flee for your life. Do not look behind you and do not stand anywhere on the plain. Flee to the hills or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, please, my lords. Look, your servant has found favor in your sight. The kindness with which you have treated me by keeping me alive has been great. But I cannot flee to the hills. The evil may take hold of me and I shall die. Look, yonder town is near enough to escape to, and it is tiny. Let me flee there and save my life. It is tiny." He replied to him, "See now, I am showing you favor in this matter too, not overthrowing the town you have spoken of. Flee there quickly, for I can do nothing until you get there. That is why the city is..."
Zohar.
Called,
Where are we?
just down on the bottom.
Oh, that is why the city is called
Zoar.
Zoar. Okay, got it. Okay. The sun was rising over the land as Lot was going down to Zoar, and the Eternal rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Eternal out of the heavens. overthrowing these cities and the entire plain, all the cities, inhabitants, and what grew in the soil. And his wife looked behind him and became a pillar of salt. What a jerk. Abraham rose early in the morning and went to the place where he had previously stood before the Eternal. As he gazed down upon Sodom and Gomorrah, and upon the whole face of the plain, lo, fumes were rising from the earth like fumes from a furnace. But when God destroyed the cities of the plain, God remembered Abraham, and when overthrowing the cities in which Lot had lived, sent Lot away from the upheaval. Together with his 2 daughters, Lot then went up from Zoar to live in the hill country, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave, and he and his 2 daughters. The firstborn,
The sons-in-laws wouldn't go,
yeah, I get it.
I guess.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
firstborn
they were
now.
laughing.
They were laughing and they said no.
They thought it was a
stayed.
joke. Yeah.
Okay, so the firstborn now said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there's no man left on earth to couple with us in the way of all the earth. Let us give our father wine to drink and lie with him and give life to offspring through our father." Whoa, is this incest?
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yep.
So that
Oh,
night
yeah.
they gave their father wine to drink. The firstborn then went and lay with her father, who had no awareness of her lying down and getting up.
I
This is very
These are the
exciting.
2 girls that were
I
off
got
and
a
throwing those
problem.
wild guys.
On the morrow, the firstborn said to the younger, "Seeing that last night I lay with my father, let us give him wine to drink tonight as well. Then you go and lie with him, so that we can give life to offspring through our father." So that night too, they gave their father wine to drink. The younger got up and lay with him, and he had no awareness of her lying down and getting up. Lot's 2 daughters became pregnant through their father. The firstborn bore a son and named him Moab. He is the ancestor of the present-day Moabites. The younger 2 bore a son and named him Ben-Ami. He is the ancestor of the present-day Ammonites. It's interesting. Both of those are kind of like evil groups.
Sworn enemies of Israel.
Yeah.
Well, and enemies of Israel because they were born out of incest.
Out of incest.
That's out of incest. Right.
So
I mean,
can we-
I don't understand why God didn't destroy them. I mean, that is just
I know.
as evil.
I don't understand
That's
that
what the
either. See,
other
that
ones
doesn't
are
make
doing.
sense. Why didn't they destroy those 2 daughters when they did that?
Right.
So
Well, I think that's kind of, if I were to blame anybody in this story about these whole paragraphs, I would blame the people of Sodom. So again, it's like one of these things where if you have a society that's so far off the mark, and I mean this idea for these daughters just doesn't come out of anywhere. They were probably surrounded by this kind of just anything goes attitude, right?
Right.
Anything
Right.
you
Right,
can
because
see,
I'm sure there were other men someplace.
goes.
I mean, these weren't the only people on earth.
I know, that's the weirdest thing. I mean, they might have thought that because they probably thought the whole world was going to get blown up, and they
Yeah,
probably
they
didn't know
didn't
anything.
know there were more people on Earth. I think they really thought the whole world was just blown up. Right. That's
Yeah,
what I think.
maybe could be.
Right.
But I think this gives us a little bit of clues too, why when we see Noah go into a land and God tells, not Noah, I'm sorry, Moses, when Moses goes into a land later on, and God tells him, wipe out everybody. It's almost like the same idea, like because if a society breaks down in such a way where anything goes, it's almost like you don't want any remnants in a lot of ways. And granted, I don't think we're there. We're not in this time period, but this is also kind of like why there's so much confusion, even after Sodom and Gomorrah's toast. But go ahead. What were you going to say, Dr. Mike?
Okay, Michael, let me put a thought on the table.
Yeah.
If you go to law school, the professors don't get up and lecture you. They don't say, we have this rule and we got that rule. Okay, what you do is you study a case, okay, and then you find out from the case what the ruling was, because then that ruling becomes a precedent. Okay, all right.
Precedent.
I think that what we're seeing in here is something similar to that. This is a morality tale I think that the people were trying to say, do not commit incest. And this is how they said it. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
But I think in this context, though, is disgusting as it is, but I think the daughters, I think they did it with not like a terrible intention, like the way the rest, like incest might have been going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, like they did it to try to preserve, like in those days, their father, you know, to have sons or whatever.
Well, but Mike, Gary, I think that if we look at this thing from a historical point of view, all the peoples, all the kings were actually committing incest.
They married the sisters.
Absolutely. They were marrying sisters.
In Egypt, absolutely.
Egypt was one of the worst. So I think that this is our way of saying, don't do it.
Mhm.
They would marry, like a guy would marry a woman who didn't have the same father but a different mother or something like that, like Abraham and
Okay,
Sarah,
I
weren't they?
know that, certainly in Egypt, and then later on, the Persians, and the Greeks,
Oh, absolutely.
the royal families intermarried.
Mhm.
So it was not unusual to have brothers and sisters marrying each other, which is
That's
part of
right.
the reason. Which is part of the reason, by the way, why so many of their offsprings were not regular children. They had big heads and they had all kinds of problems. So I
Correct.
think that I think that we need to put this thing into a historical perspective.
Perfect.
You hear-
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay. Abraham then journeyed from there towards the Negev and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, settling in Gerar. Abraham said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister."
There you
And
go.
Melech, king of Gerar, sent men to seize Sarah. God now came to Abimelech in a dream of the night, saying to him, "Look, you're a dead man because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." Abimelech had not touched her, and he said, "My lord, will you slay a completely innocent folk? Did he not tell me she is my sister? And she too said, he is my brother. I did this with a pure heart and clean hands." In the dream, God said to him, "I do indeed know that you did this with a pure heart, and it is I who held you back from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife. He is a prophet and will intercede for you so that you may live. But if you do not return her, know that you will most certainly die, you and yours." When Abimelech woke up early in the morning, he summoned all his retainers and drummed the whole story into their ears, and they became filled with fear. He then summoned Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? How
How had I sinned?
had I how had I sinned against you that you brought a great sin upon me and my kingdom? You did things to me that should not be done." Abimelech said to Abraham, "What were you thinking of that you did this?" Abraham replied, "I thought, there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me for my wife. And as a matter of fact, she is my sister, my father's daughter, not my mother's daughter, though not my mother's daughter,
Oh,
my wife."
you're right.
And when God made me wander from his house, I said to her, "Do this kindness for me. Wherever you go, say of me, he's my brother."
Oh, then he was a half brother, a half sister.
Boy, so much confusion.
Mm.
Abimelech then took sheep and oxen, male and female slaves, and gave them to Abraham. He also restored his wife Sarah to him. And Abimelech said, "Look, my land is before you. Settle wherever you please." And to Sarah he said, "Look, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Thus it testifies to your unblemished virtue to all who are with you. You are in the right with them all." Abraham then prayed to God, and God restored Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, and they bore children. For the Eternal had completely shut every womb of Abimelech's household on account of Abraham's wife, Sarah.
All right. Keep going, please.
The Eternal now remembered Sarah. The Eternal did for Sarah as promised, so that she became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the exact time God had told him. Abraham named his newborn son, whom Sarah had born to him, Isaac. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born.
All
Sarah
right,
said-
Abraham, go. Yes. Our guy.
Okay, Michael, if you don't mind, could you go back one page? I think that there was something about sister, in the
Right.
We already talked about that, yeah.
No, but there was a comment in there.
Yeah, she said
No. In
down
the
below.
comment,
Okay. She is my sister.
she's my sister. Let's see what it say in there.
Okay. On the position and meaning of sister, see commentary to Genesis 12:10 and to 13:18. According to later Torah legislation, union with one's half-sister is considered incest and is strictly forbidden. That's
okay.
the Levite law. Tradition
Right.
explained the contradiction by pointing out that this happened in pre-Torah days, or that Abraham played for time when he made this statement. Or
In other words, he was lying.
it could have gone either way, I guess. A half sister.
So it could have been the truth or it could not have been the truth.
We'll never know.
The mystery
There we go.
continues. I love it. What do you think?
Tune in next week.
I can read a couple paragraphs.
Okay.
Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. All who hear will laugh with me. And she added, who would have dared say to Abraham, Sarah shall nurse children, yet I have borne a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and on Isaac's weaning day, Abraham held a great feast. Now Sarah saw the son that Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham playing. She said to Abraham, throw this slave girl and her son out. The son of this slave girl is not going to share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. This grieved Abraham greatly on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be grieved over the boy or your slave. Do whatever Sarah tells you, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be called yours.
That wasn't nice, though.
I know this is
But God said he would do something good.
right. Yet I will also make a nation out of the children of the slave son, for he too is your offspring.
That's correct.
Early the next morning, Abraham got up and took bread and a water skin and handed them to Hagar, placing them and the boy on her shoulder. Then he cast her out. Trudging away, she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was all gone, she cast the child away under a bush. She walked away and sat down on the other side at a remove of about a bow shot, thinking, let me not see the child's death. There on the other side, she sat and wept in a loud voice. God heard the boy's cry, and from heaven an angel of God called to Hagar and said, what is troubling you, Hagar? Have no fear, for God has heard the cry of the lad where he is. Get up, lift the boy, and hold him with your hand, for I am going to make him a great nation. God then opened her eyes, and she saw a well. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy to drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became a bowman. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife from the land of Egypt. At that time, Abimelech in Pekol, with the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Swear to me now that you will not be false to me, my progeny, or my posterity. Do me and the land in which you have been staying as much kindness as I have done to you? Abraham replied, I will swear. But Abraham rebuked Abimelech on account of the water well that Abimelech's servants had stolen. And Abimelech replied, I do not know who did this. You certainly never told me, nor do I ever hear of it until today. Nor did I ever hear of it until today. Abraham then took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them forged a treaty. Abraham then set aside 7 lambs of the flock. When Abimelech said, what do these 7 lambs that you have set aside signify? Abraham replied, so that you take the 7 lambs from me as my testimony that I dug this well. That is why that place is called Beersheba, for there the 2 of them took an oath.
Oh, okay.
What does Beersheba mean, I wonder?
I
Well of
guess that's
7.
what it means.
Yeah.
Oath.
Well of oath. Well of 7.
I think
Well
it
of
has to do with
7.
well.
Sheva is 7, and so the well must be beer. I don't know.
I think
Yeah,
it's well.
well of 7.
Yeah.
The well of 7. Yeah.
The well of 7.
Great.
Or 7 wells or something like that.
They forged a treaty in Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Pekul, the commander of his army, got up and returned to the land of the Philistines, while Abraham planted a tamarisk and called upon the name of the Eternal, the everlasting God. He stayed in the land of the Philistines a long time. All right, the land of the Philistines. What's a tamarisk? Is that like a planted a tamarisk?
It's a tree. It's a tree.
There it is. Tree.
Planting of joy.
Planting of joy. Oh, a good ending.
Why do we hold Sarah in such high regard if she would have she would have condemned that child to death? And it was her idea in the first place for Abraham to have that child.
Because she didn't think she would ever have a child.
I know,
And
but
she
then
knew-
when she
And
did,
she knew Abraham
she put them
should
in
have a
such
son.
danger, and we hold her in such high regard.
She was very, very jealous of that,
Yeah,
of the fact that there was another son. And Isaac should be the only son.
And I think it also talks about, yeah, maybe the founding men and women of the whole entire world, they had their faults, right? I mean, doesn't it give us a
Oh,
little
yeah,
hope?
And all.
our heroes
Oh,
have feet of
absolutely.
clay, evidently.
But at the time that Sarah, wanted Abraham to, have a child with Hagar, it was Sarah had no idea that she herself would
She was
ever
barren.
conceive a child.
She thought she would never have a child.
So it
I know,
kinda,
but then she condemned this child.
I know, but I'm saying there again, she's human.
Because it didn't happen the way it was supposed to. Sarah thought the child was going to be as if it were hers, as if she had given birth to it. But the slave Hagar took pride in it, and it's like she took another position in the house because she had that son. And that's not the way Sarah had
Yeah, I
envisioned
think it was supposed to be a surrogate, like what we think of today as a
Correct.
surrogate. Yeah.
Correct.
I think it'd be
Yeah,
like
that
a
makes
surrogate.
sense.
Yeah.
Still, it doesn't
She
excuse
said
her in my eyes
these
for
are
what
the
she's
different
done.
places.
It just doesn't. I don't care what the reason. But that's
You have a right to your belief all the time.
Mhm. That's true.
Absolutely.
That's true. These are tough. These
I
are
have a
tough words
belief that
sometimes.
this isn't also true either. How's that? I don't feel it's all, I don't believe it's all 100% true. I mean, I still believe that the way it was written down, there was a lot of things missing. That's my personal opinion.
I would feel better if that were so. Now I feel a little bit better. Since my name
That's
is
just-
Kaya
hey, that's
Sarah,
just
which
my
means the life
opinion,
of
and I can be
Sarah.
all
My
wet.
name is that. Oh my goodness, my namesake.
What? I'm
Okay.
sorry. Go ahead, Cynthia. I'm sorry. What was that again?
I'm very sensitive to the issue because my name in Hebrew is Chaya Sarah. That means the
Ah.
life of Sarah. She's
Yes.
my namesake. And
Next week's
It's a
Torah
very
portion.
beautiful name. It's a beautiful name.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cynthia, since you're bringing this thing up, let's assume.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Okay, assume, for example, that you are writing the Bible right now. Take this incident. How would you write it?
Oh, I would have lived in harmony. They would have been brothers. I mean, the children, I would never put a child out into.
But supposedly,
I would never jeopardize them. I wouldn't do that to any child.
Israel, but you understand the child is the progenitor of the Arab people.
Yeah,
Right.
but
That
that's
is the
not because
thing.
of Sarah
You
that she
understand?
became.
But maybe that's the
Maybe
reason
it
it was
is.
written.
She
maybe
caused
that's the
all the
reason it
trouble
was written.
between the Jews and the Arabs. So now we
But wait a
can.
minute. Maybe
So now
that's
I
the
feel
reason it was
guilty.
written that way. So that they gave a reason for it to be written that way. It was not written at the time of Abraham and Sarah, you know. It was written a long time after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe they
It
put
was
it down
the
there
70,
as
the
a way
70s,
so that
the
you figured
70s
out
month-
that's why they did it.
the
And
Sanhedrin.
that's the
right.
reason they did that.
So in other words, they
But
told
it may
the
not be the
story
truth. And it may not be the truth.
Yeah,
It was
what
a
I'm
way
trying
of-
to say, Cynthia, is at first it was sent, it was passed down orally. Many years later, it was written by 70 very righteous men, okay, rabbi type men. And there's a lot that I believe is missing. That's my personal opinion. I know that a lot of people don't believe
Well,
this.
it's comforting to think that she wasn't as bad as she's portrayed in this
But,
thing.
you know, you can believe whatever you want to believe.
What's coming up kind of in some ways, well, without getting too far ahead, she kind of suffers a lot too in ways
She sure
that
does.
yeah, and in ways that, you know, kind of probably lead to her death.
Yep.
Do you want
And
to
some of
pick
them
it
we're
up,
going to
Gary?
read about.
Plus the
Right,
fact
we're going
is
to read.
that
We're
she,
going to
you
read
know, she
about them
never,
right now. Actually,
after Abraham took up Isaac to sacrifice
yep.
and brought back down, she never talked to Abraham again.
Really?
And then you go
Never.
into the
I
next
wouldn't
Torah
either.
portion. Chaya Sarah, she's already dead.
Oh.
Yeah, she never talked to him again
I can't say I blame
because
her.
he went up to sacrifice his son. So
Yeah, but I think part of what is difficult is she's put up as, you know, such a, held in such esteem, like in my religion, like Mary, Jesus' mother is, and something like that. And like that kind of thing, like the founder of nations, she's somebody that is mentioned in all your prayers and things like that. So it's hard to imagine that she would do that, she would be that jealous that she would do that, that she would not be so, after having a child at 90, she still wouldn't trust God enough to know that if God had asked Abraham to do that, that's what God wanted, and that she shouldn't have punished Abraham for doing what God asked of him. You know what I mean? Like,
you got to understand that
it's hard to hold her up there and say, you know, what a wonderful
interesting
person
thing is
she
that-
is, when I think that's what Cynthia is trying to say. I don't know if I'm
Exactly.
saying it right, but
Well,
Anyway,
good.
it's interesting in Judaism that all of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, they all have warts, honey. None of them are
well, yeah, God
portrayed
doesn't pick the easy ones.
as completely without sin and without guilt. Absolutely not.
I think that represents the human race. I don't think any
Absolutely.
of us haven't
Absolutely.
done something that we haven't been ashamed or felt bad about. You know what I'm saying? You know,
They are human
Yeah.
we're all
and they
human.
have sins like everybody else.
Very well said. Very well said. Who would like to read?
I have a question.
Yes. Barak.
Okay. So in biblical times, a man could have more than one woman.
Mhm,
Polygamy was accepted.
mhm.
So he could have Sarah and he could have Hagar as
Yes.
women, whether Hagar was a concubine or whatever we're gonna call her. This was biblical times.
Right.
Okay. So when Sarah is throwing her out of the house, she's asserting that she is the number one. She is Abraham's first wife,
Right.
and she is the
His
head of
only
the
wife.
house.
Mm-hmm.
And his only wife.
Right.
And his only wife.
And not a servant or not a, yeah. That's
But Jacob had 4.
right. Yeah, yeah. 2
Rachel
wives.
and Leah and 2 concubines,
Yeah.
2 other sisters. There were 4 of them.
So are you
So-
saying that Sarah's kind of is asserting herself as the wife? This is my husband.
This is
What
my,
I'm- what
my
I'm
territory.
Saying is that there's a place where I read that the child from, Sarah had said, from between the knees of Hagar was going to be Sarah's child. And the opposite happened. Hagar said, this is my son, and I now have a position in this home and in
Uh-huh.
Abraham's life that I didn't have before. And this is what Sarah resented.
Mm.
Okay.
This is what didn't work out the way Sarah envisioned.
Mhm.
I
She
agree
thought
with
the
you.
child was going
I
to be
agree with
her
you.
That
child.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I agree totally. And then plus the fact that Sarah had no idea she was going to have.
Right. Wasn't
Right.
She didn't know she was going to have Isaac. And also a lot of times too, just from my own perspective on life is like, I could imagine, for instance, my parents are in their 80s. I sometimes think of their death often, just because I know it's going to happen, and probably, hopefully not the next 10 years, but then maybe the next 20 years. But I know that I don't know how I'm going to react to that, even though I can think about it. Right. So I think Sarah probably thought about exactly what Bracha was saying. Like, I'm going to have this child, but then she's dealing with the child's real flesh and blood mother, and it wasn't working out that way. And I think she probably had one way it was going to work out, and it didn't work out that way. But she also had these reactions that no one can really know what their reaction is going to be in any given situation, even when it's all kind of like thought out, like, oh yeah, because life is not logical, right? It's kind of,
But even now, when people hire a surrogate mother,
yes, this is
sometimes the surrogate mother, when she has a child in her hands, she says, no way.
Yeah, she
This
doesn't
is
want to
my
give it up.
baby.
I agree with you, Bracha. I really do. I
It's
agree
what
with
happens to a woman when she has a child.
you.
She
Right.
could have had all kinds of arrangements with Sarah, but once Hagar saw she had this baby, something happens to a woman it's really beyond the former thought she could have had.
Right.
very well
This
put.
happens
She's
a
now a
lot with
mother.
people
That's
adopting
true.
too. That
That's
do. A lot
very
of people
true.
are going to adopt
Yes.
at the last minute. The teenage mother decides to keep the child. It happens a lot. Yeah.
Right. It
That's very
finally
true.
hits them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's very true. I think anybody that's ever had a child is, you think about it, and then when you actually have the child in your arms, there's nothing that prepares you for what
Right.
it really is. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like,
Exactly.
so you could say
Exactly.
that, you could make all kinds of plans, but
It's an
when
experience.
that baby's in your arms,
Right.
you-
It cannot
Yeah.
be in your thoughts what you're going to do, because
exactly,
it's going to be
Right.
a totally new experience to you.
Right.
exactly. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
I think
And-
it's the hardest thing on earth for a woman to give up her child, even though she said she was going to. I think
Yep.
it's the hardest thing in the world. I really do.
And
Sometimes go ahead.
those people who do give them up, then there are all kinds of nightmares that they suffer through afterwards,
You're right.
when they
You're right.
realize what has happened.
Right.
Unless that it truly is a selfless act, and that you can somehow realize that the life you give to the child it's truly, you know what I mean, it breaks your heart, you live with the pain, you live with that, what happened with that, but the child is you truly did it for the child, not to make it easier on yourself, not to
That's true.
be
That's true
financially
too.
sound or anything like that, but truly because you realized you couldn't offer a life to that child, and you give it up selflessly so that someone else can have that joy and also take care of the child,
Right.
you know, in a way that you couldn't. But there aren't that many people that applies to, I don't think. I think that that's an ideal.
I think
see
your
a
cat wants attention
Yeah.
over there.
Yes, she does. This is Simona.
Oh, she's nice. I love cats.
I like kitty cats. My kitty cat's lying in the, I don't know where she is. She's on the bed.
She likes to
Oh,
come
she's on the
visit.
bed sleeping. My baby's on the bed sleeping.
Ah,
Who would like to? Okay, I think we got one more chapter to go. Gary, would you want?
Okay. After these things, God tested Abraham, saying to him, Abraham, and he said, Hineni, here I am. God said, take your son, your only one, the one you love, Isaac, and go forth to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. Abraham rose early, saddled his donkey, chopped wood for the burnt offering, took Isaac his son and his 2 lads, and set out for the place that God had spoken of to him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Abraham said to his servant, Lad, stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder. We will worship and return to you. Abraham then took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. In his own hand he held the firestone and the knife, and the 2 of... Where am I?
At the top.
Oh, and the 2 of them went on together. Isaac then said to Abraham his father, Father, he answered, Here I am, my son. And Isaac said, Here is the firestone and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham replied, God will see to the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. They came to the place that God had shown him. There Abraham built the altar and arranged the wood and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Abraham now reached out and took the knife to slay his son, but out of heaven an angel of the Eternal called to him, saying, Abraham, Abraham. He replied, Here I am, Hineni. The angel then said, Do not lay your hand on the lad. Do nothing to him, for now I know that you are the one who fears God, as you did, and not withhold your son, your only one, from me. Abraham lifted his eyes. He now could see a ram, just after it was caught by its horns in a thicket. Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named that place Vayeira. To this day, people say, On the mount of the eternal God will be seen. Then out of heaven an angel of the Eternal called to Abraham a second time, saying, By myself I swear, says the Eternal One, that because you did this thing and did not withhold your son, your only one, I will bless you greatly and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands of the seashore, and your descendants shall take possession of the gates of their foes. And through your descendants the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you hearkened to my voice. Abraham then returned to his servant lads. They got up and traveled together to Beersheba, and Abraham settled in Beersheba. And after all these things, Abraham was told the following. Milcah, she too has borne sons to your brother Nahor, Uz, his first son, his brother Buz, Kemuel, father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Zilpah, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 did Milcah bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine. Her name was Reumah. She too bore Teba, Gaham, Tehash, and Makah.
There we go.
Lots of big lots.
Yes, Rebecca will marry Isaac, right?
That's Rebecca's the one who marries Isaac, right?
Fantastic. Anything else that we'd like to discuss? A lot of good stuff here.
So basically, she was like a cousin.
The metaphor of the ram, I think that's important to discuss. And the idea that like a lot of commentators, like they say, was the ram. The ram couldn't have been there stuck in the thickets for thousands of years, but it was there when Abraham needed it to be there, but Abraham wouldn't have known it wasn't there if he didn't look up to see it.
You gotta look up, right?
But in other words, here he was in the process of the most difficult thing, like to sacrifice his son, and yet there was still a better alternative to that right there in front of his eyes if he just looked up to see it.
So you
And
should
there has
always
to be
look
a
up and
reason
see
why
what the
God put it
alternative
there.
is.
And Abraham told Isaac that God would provide the lamb, and God did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But Abraham had to look up to see it. So that's important, because in every situation,
You should look
especially
up
even
and see
a
that
bad
what there is.
situation, but there always can be a better alternative, but you have to be perceptive of it. You have to look
Yeah.
up to see it. You have to look
Right.
up.
Okay,
And that is how I look up and saw my baby.
Yeah.
Because it was bad.
So imagine, for example, that Isaac said to his mother, "Do you know what my father was going to do?"
Maybe Abraham said, "Don't tell your mother. Just
Kind of
don't
mess Isaac up
because we're
psychologically
gonna have
too,
a
right?
big problem if you tell your mother.
Don't
Gotta
you
have
tell
an
your
effect on
mother.
Isaac.
Don't tell her."
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon B'chol hashalom. Ki atahu V'chol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. B'to beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Good night, everybody.
Laila Tov.
Lila Tov.
Laila
Bye,
Tov.
Ellie. Bye, Ellie. Bye, Cindy. Bye,
Bye,
Ruth.
Ellie.
Bye. Bye, Maureen.
Ellie, I'll be your neighbor
Everybody.
soon.
Bye, Dr.
Bye-bye.
Mike. Bye, Baraka. Bye. Bye, Annie.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye, Maureen. Bye-bye, Gary. Love you.